You know, Jagger, when you think about it, one of the best things about being a dictator, well, even if it's only for one day, it's got to be the parades and the rallies. But in today's cautionary video, Donald Trump's latest plan to offer up his generous posterior for some additional public smooching the day before the inauguration, well, that's causing concern among some reasonable thinking experts like former Homeland Security Secretary Jake Johnson, given the recent terror attacks in New Orleans and Las Vegas just over this weekend.
President Biden saying that officials are now investigating whether there is a link between the deadly terror attack in New Orleans and the Tesla Cybertruck explosion that happened outside of Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas.
The suspect, identified as Shamsuddin Jabbar, a 42-year-old man from Texas who previously served in the U.S. military. He was driving a privately rented pickup truck from Turo, an Airbnb-type rental site for cars.
An ISIS flag was located on the trailer hitch of the vehicle, and the FBI is working to determine the subject's potential associations and affiliations with terrorist organizations.
It is unusual that both drivers did use the Turo app to rent those cars. So obviously this is part of the investigation. We did really receive a statement from Turo tonight that says they're cooperating. They also said that neither of the drivers had a criminal background that would alert them as a security threat.
Now, earlier today on MSNBC, he sounded an alarm about timing, public safety, international and domestic terrorism, and the actual need for such an event at all. Now, as you'll see in a second, he raised some head-shaking points about the chaos that Trump may well be inviting to indulge his extra special rally or his special extra rally. Well, in fairness, such acts of symbolic hubris, they're commonplace throughout man's history. You know, we've seen this show before.
My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair.
Now, as you're about to see, while former Secretary Johnson expresses legit concerns about issues of public safety and maintaining order, there is a better way to run a rally, and Donald Trump, well, he knows this firsthand. Boy, that looks like a whole bunch of spontaneous, orderly fun. In today's story on MSNBC, it draws into focus the price that we all may have to pay to the insatiable whims of presidential pomposity. Take it away, Jonathan Lemire.
And now there's some news that President-elect Trump was going to hold a rally in Washington, D.C. later this month on January 19th, which, of course, the day before his inauguration. According to an announcement from his inaugural committee, the event is being dubbed a victory rally and will take place at the Capital One Arena. Trump has not held a rally in Washington since the speech he delivered on the ellipse on January 6, 2021, before a crowd of his supporters stormed the Capitol in an attempt to stop the certification of the 2020 election results. Meanwhile, in a ceremony later today at the White House, President Biden will award the second highest civilian medal to the leaders of the House January 6 Select Committee. Former Congresswoman Liz Cheney and Democratic Congressman Benny Thompson will both receive the Presidential Citizens Medal. The award will also be given to 18 other recipients, including some who helped set new standards for treating injuries in war. So, Mr. Secretary, let's go back to the idea of this rally that Trump is holding in Washington. Now, after he won in 2016, he actually had a series of victory rallies across the country. He has not done that this time around. But now he's doing it at the eve of the inauguration. And let's talk, in light of our conversation all morning long, let's talk about security for these events. Now, January 6th, this coming Monday, likely, security will be necessary just because it always is, but there's certainly not the threat posed there like it was 4 years ago. So we could set that aside. But that combination of January 19th and particularly the inauguration, which could draw hundreds of thousands of people to Washington.
Yes.
You were tasked with your old post of securing an event, that very event. How does one do that, especially in light of these new terror threats?
The inauguration is designated what we refer to as an NSSE, a National Special Security Event. January 6th this year has also been designated an NSSE to put in the middle of those two events a very gigantic presidential level rally presents a significant security challenge in terms of resources, manpower, and so it's not as simple as just throwing a big party on short notice. You've got to put a lot of security in place when you have the person who's about to become president in this current threat environment, which we just talked about a few minutes ago. And so I hope the president-elect and his team carefully considered that before they decided to have this large rally. I would have thought that some of the very same people that are coming to the inauguration would go to the rally. So kind of what's the point?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure I see the point either. But just as a final thought, just an event so big, the inauguration itself. I mean, there will be, of course, federal law enforcement help from the states. Yep. But how does one? How does one secure an event that size? And let's remember this, of course, the man who's about to be taking the oath of office survived a pair of assassination attempts this year. We know the threat level is very high.
I am confident that the inaugural event, the inauguration, will be very, very secure. They've been building the barricades and the security on the Capitol grounds since before the election. I've seen it myself 8 years ago when I was responsible for all of this. There'll be so much security and screening, a chipmunk won't be able to get on the Capitol grounds. But again, to add an additional major security event to that weekend just before makes the situation more complex and more challenging, very clearly.
Yeah, the security around the White House has been hardened as well. Saw that recently. Former Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for spending some time with us this morning. We appreciate it.
Well, as we endeavor to adjust our perspective in the new year from the rabbit hole to the moon, in the rabbit hole, this debate is about the machinations of coordinating resources to secure a debatably unnecessary event. From the moon, the leader of the free world is patting himself on the back in a most dangerously grandiose way that further distances the gap between public and servant.